Oyster Bay Services Committee, and we have people in the gallery that know exactly where the washrooms are, where the mustering station is, where the exits are. So we'll just move right on through. We will obviously recognize the fact we're doing our business today on the traditional unceded territory of the Comox First Nations. We're going to start off right away with number one, the asset management planning with the presentation. And over to CEO for introductions.
Thank you very much, Chair and Director. And we have two reports on the agenda that Chris LaRose will help outline for you. One is a response to your questions and follow-up with respect to asset management, and the other is the Watuco Water System Servicing Decision.
Might drag that mic a little closer.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
There's old grumpy white guys that can't hear.
All right, good morning through the chair. So at the October 21st meeting, staff brought forward an asset management plan developed for the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Service and recommended a 5% increase in user rates to strengthen the reserve contributions while a comprehensive rate review is performed in 2020. The committee deferred the decision and asked staff report back on several questions to inform a decision at today's meeting. So the first question was just kind of asking for some more detail on the planned financial modeling. So the work completed by AECOM is a much more detailed look at the BCOB assets that was initially performed by Econics 5 years ago. However, the conclusions regarding the appropriate reserve contributions that AECOM reached are similar to what Econics reached, which should be reassuring to the committee. In 2020, we will work with Econics to use the detailed asset management work recently completed by AECOM to develop a range of scenarios to identify the optimum assumptions for future borrowing and user rate and parcel tax increases to help support the committee's decision on a path forward. So we're aiming to have that staff report summarizing the financial modeling back to the committee in the fall of 2020. So the bottom line is that without a rate increase, the average reserve contribution over this next five-year financial plan is approximately $60,000, which is less than half that recommended by Econics and AECOM both. So not only is this putting us in a worse position later when replacements are needed in terms of our reserve balance, but it's also providing very little buffer for operational overages and increases the risk of the service running a deficit. The second question was regarding pipeline rehabilitation and the concept of specifically the concept of relining. So I guess at the last meeting there was some concern expressed about the CVRD's plans for replacing aging pipe. So first I'll point out that there's very little replacement of our asbestos cement pipe within the 20-year horizon covered by the AECOM asset management plan. But I can reassure you that the pipe will only be renewed if it has a high risk of failing, or if it is failing so frequently that it's cheaper to replace it or renew it. So we're familiar with the pipe relining technology that was brought up by the directors at the last meeting, and it's certainly already a tool in our toolbox, and we will consider this option when pipe requires renewal for one reason or another. The last question that was brought up was just asking for a reminder on the procurement process that was used to secure the AECOM services. So as highlighted in the timeline, which we've attached is Appendix A, the committee supported the award of the asset management contract to AECOM in early 2018, and staff have provided updates on the asset management work to the committee through the two subsequent financial planning processes and a dedicated report this July updating the committee and foreshadowing this recommendation. So I guess to summarize, we feel this work builds very strongly on the previous work and confirms that previous target for reserve contributions. And without an increase now, the reserve contributions will be far below the recommended level, and that increase the risk of a deficit. And that a detailed rate strategy supported by financial analysis will be brought forward in late 2020 to inform a decision by the committee on a path forward. Are there any questions?
Director?
Well, I don't know how much we're paying ACON, but since they're doing the same, they're acting on the same recommendations that the previous people recommended to us 5 years ago, I would rather be spending the money on infrastructure rather than spending the money on consultants to tell us what we already know. So that's how I feel about it. That I don't know how much we're paying ACON, but it seems to me to be a bit of, unnecessary expense to hire another consultant to tell us what we already know. So, for 20, when reading the report, the second paragraph says that after the 2020 5% rate increase, you'll bring forward rate increases balance between user rates and parcel taxes. I would like to see, and I think that's what we wanted 5 years ago, was to have a schedule of rates that were predictable for the constituents, so that you're not jumping rates like every year it's something, so that people know, if I live in Black Creek Oyster Bay for the next 5 years, this is the predicted annual cost of this service, and it would be better to smooth the rates than to have unpredictable increases from the point of view of the user. So I would like that to happen. I would like, if we're going to go ahead, I mean, you've already contracted ACON, so no point of me, complaining about it at this point, but I wouldn't have done that if I was the procurer. And I would think that we should have gone on the
I can just speak to a couple points there. That first of all, the work with AECOM is complete, so not just contracted, but it is complete.
Okay.
And it was on the order of approximately $30,000, of which a third was covered by grant funding. And the very reason we undertook this scope, which was previously approved by the committee, was to get into the position of being able to provide that certainty to the residents about the rates. Without this clear view of our infrastructure liability, there is no ability to have the foresight required to maintain a steady schedule of rates. So that is exactly the reason why this work was initiated. So what it's done is it's provided us it's expanded our horizon that we view our operational and capital costs from 5 years to 20. So without taking that step, it's really difficult to be able to convey any rate certainty to the residents. So I think that's exactly what we set out to do here.
So we will have a smoothing of the rates over a 5-year period coming up
So-
in the next phase. If we pass this 5% for 2020, we'll have a 5-year plan for the rate structure for BCOB that's predictable.
In fact, we will have a significantly longer timeline than that even. So what the work we'll do in 2020 and then bring back to you for review and tweaking and approval will actually allow us, fairly clear rate certainty for well beyond 5 years. Yeah.
And we'll be focused on the BCOB services as it exists now, not if we have to put in filtration galleries to accommodate Watuko, or we have to put in
So the commitment.
major infrastructure for future development.
Yeah, so the as I'll highlight in the next report, so the commitment we've made from the start when considering the Watuko opportunity is that all costs will be borne by Watuko, so there will be no additional cost. On the flip side, there's significant revenue that would come into the service from the capital improvement cost charges, which would help. And so if by the time we complete the rate analysis in 2020, we will have a decision and know the status of the Watuko initiative, and so that analysis will take into account that increased reserve balance coming from the capital improvement cost charges from that conversion process. So that will, if the committee supports the direction of moving to expand to Watuco, and Watuco supports it, then that will help to bring down the required rate increases looking forward over that longer time frame. So that will all happen before we come back to you with the rate analysis.
And I would hope that when ACON does the financial model for the 5-year plan for the residents, that they will take into consideration that future users need to have the opportunity to pay for long-term infrastructure investments. So it shouldn't be the current users paying the whole shot. It should be mostly parcel taxes, borrowing, and grants. But user rates, I don't think the current users should pay for something that's going to be consumed 20 to 50 years down the road. So I think that we need to have the financial model reflect that idea that, you know, it's not simply current users that should be bearing the full burden of the costs of upgrading the pipes.
Understood, and then that is definitely going to be a strong part of the financial analysis we do in 2020. So when we come back to you, we will show the outcome of a number of scenarios, and the scenarios will be differentiated largely by how much they rely on future borrowing. So, and we'll be able to show you the impacts on current rates and future rates of different assumptions about how much borrowing that we assume future users will foot the bill for. Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay. I just was curious what level of analysis AECOM is going to be doing on the system when we do our. Are they inspecting pipes? Are they doing like pipe-by-type inspections and stuff like that? I mean, how will they assess the condition of the assets?
So AECOM scope is done. So
Okay.
the work that will be done in 2020 will be by Iconics, and that'll be just purely financial modeling.
Just the financial,
Yeah.
okay.
So but I can say that what AECOM did do to inform the asset management plan that came on your agenda last meeting was largely desktop and inspection of the above ground infrastructure.
Big above ground stuff.
So what we've relied on for the in-ground infrastructure is some past study work, and then the age and criticality of the infrastructure for informing, you know, when we think it will need to be replaced.
Like you say, they have a certain shelf life.
Yeah, exactly. Based largely on expected lifespan. But as we proceed through this asset management work, we will undertake, and as we undertake repairs, so for example, when our crews go out and repair a main break, they have the opportunity frequently to take a sample of the pipe that broke and have that assessed, and then that could help build a picture of the actual condition of the pipe, and not just relying as much on its age. So as we proceed, we will be fleshing in our knowledge of the condition below ground by doing those types of condition assessments.
And of course,
Yeah.
being it's all metered, we can tell pretty well where the breaks are, where the leaks are. Because I think at
Yeah.
one time we're looking at 11% or something in leakage in the system. Do you know what it is?
I don't know what it is now. I know that we've brought it down
You brought it down.
significantly, but there's definitely still leakage occurring, and the better our metering is, the better we can.
So you roughly
identify
know
that.
what block it's in or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 And of course, when and if Watuco comes online, they will also be metered. So we'll also have
Yes.
that ability to isolate
Yeah.
problems. Thank you. Any more? Okay.
Just wanted to add something that in the Erie D water system, I added a line item last year for a SCADA system to be put onto the Erie D lines to ascertain how much water was going through that pipe. Like, I know they're kind of expensive, but they do, where you're transporting water long distances, They do help to tell you whether, and they give you digital readings daily, like anytime you want to know what the water flow is on your lines, you can refer to the online data and figure out where your leaks are. And it does cost $500,000, but it's worth it if you need to know.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have been able to install a detailed SCADA system over the last several years. So the Black Creek Oyster Bay system is fully digitized. We have access to graphs of every key parameter for both supply and distribution. All our reservoir levels, all our meters are all displayed on a screen that we can plot against various graphs.
So is the SCADA is the municipal water SCADA system on different parts of the piping system, like say out to Kelland, out to Macaulay?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
All of our key
It's good to know.
meters, reservoir levels, the flow rates, all the various equipment within the treatment plant itself, the wells, the well levels. It's all input into that. It's incredibly powerful when you compare
no
it to
mysteries.
how it used to be. We look through our old filing cabinets that are stored in some of our stations, and you've got all the circular graphs, and that was really the only way of pulling out data before was really time intensive. So now at a click of a button we can compare the chlorine residual against the flow rate from the reservoir and spot trends, which is really
that's
really
grelike
interesting. Yeah.
Director, you're going to have to visit Nassau Control Center here
Very
next door.
wonderful. Yeah.
It's just 2 doors down. It looks like you're fish in control.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So on receipt, all in favor? And recommendation? I'll second it. Any further discussion on the recommendation? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries. And from water to water, Watuco Water System Servicing Decision and Path Forward. And lo and behold, it is Chris LaRose.
Thank you. Through the chair. So in August, staff brought forward a report updating this committee on the ongoing analysis and the consultation with Watuco and the Watuco residents. At that point, we highlighted the timing of a required decision by this committee on whether to support bringing Watuco into the Black Creek Oyster Bay service. The Watuco system has a looming island health deadline to install the treatment technology required to satisfy the provincial surface water treatment objectives. Similar to the larger regional system, the smaller systems are being held to the same standard. And the owner is unable to work through the BC Utilities Commission to secure the significant borrowing that we would be required to install the required infrastructure. On our side, the BCOB is in critical need of new water capacity, and we're facing growing capital replacement costs and growing operational costs. So expansion of the Black Creek Oyster Bay water service to include the Watuco area would add critically needed river water capacity. It would add approximately $800,000 to our capital reserve, and help to dilute future operating and capital costs with approximately 20% more users. So for these reasons, staff are recommending that the BCOB committee support the concept of BCOB water service boundary expansion to include Watuco, and that staff be directed to undertake a petition of the Watuco residents to confirm that path forward. So if the BCOB were to support this approach and the Watuco residents' petition is successful, all the costs of conversion would be borne by Watuco, with only upside to the current BCOB residents, including that boost to capital reserves and more water capacity. If the BCOB doesn't support expansion, the CVRD will work through the EASC to seek support for conversion of the Watuco system into an independent water service. But that is not the preferred approach, given the need to build a standalone filtration system and then operate that independently by the same water group, the same group of operators that is operating the Black Creek Oyster Bay service. So just to summarize, expansion of the BCOB water service to include Watuco would not cost the existing users anything. It would reduce future capital and operating costs to those existing users and will help to reduce the critical water shortage at no additional impacts to the Oyster River, as all of these connections are currently being fed off of the river. So that's all I have today. I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions, Director?
I'm a little bit. I have cold feet, like I sometimes do when I come down to this committee lately. I have cold feet about,
New building will be warmer.
yeah, it's like chilling. It's chilling. I don't like the idea of a petition initiated by our staff. I like the idea of a referendum through the whole of that proposed service area, or perhaps if it's BCOB that's going to be running this service, then through the whole BCOB area, because it's going to, any kind of gigantic increase to the users, and you mentioned it's 20% of our total, which is like 200 units of water.
So it'll be about 130. So 130.
130 current users, but
Yeah.
what about the growth node and the 350 units on the driving range that was approved by planning just,
So
and the regional growth strategy that identifies Saratoga Miracle as a growth node? I mean, you're looking at hundreds of units beyond what I believe is the capacity to serve them with infrastructure, with enough water from the river.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could just clarify that the issues pertaining to land use, zoning, permitted uses or otherwise are not part of this consideration. Those land use designations exist with or without the conversion. This is a matter of converting a water system and options for how that water system will be managed. And with respect to the development potential in this area, it is subject to the regional growth strategy. The regional growth strategy is a document that requires sign-off of the Strathcona Regional District as well as the other neighboring regional districts. So there was an opportunity and will continue to be an opportunity for Strathcona to express its concerns or otherwise with respect to the rate of development and the potential. But what exists now within this area is historical and is limited by the regional growth strategy, which is an adopted bylaw.
I know, and I definitely spoke strongly against the regional growth strategy at the Strathcona District. I believe that it's wrong-minded to put that kind of pressure on that river, which goes down to nothing in the summer, and we've run out of water in previous years almost, within 3 days of completely running out of water. So to put major growth into Saratoga Miracle is wrong-minded in my opinion, and it is connected to this committee because we're the ones who would have to, supply the water. And if we don't have the water to supply, then, what are we doing? I mean, if it was limited to the people who actually are on Watuco right now, like the residents down there, that's one thing. But, signing a blank check to 200 to 300 more units
I don't.
doesn't make any sense.
Director, I think we're getting off course. We have to talk about the Watuco conversion. We're not talking about any crazy runaway development, which is not on the books as far as I know. So there was one unit there, one development for about 140 units, but it has not moved forward since I've been elected. The whole thing's been back and forth over the years, but what we're talking about is how to best move forward given the timeline that we've got from VHA on this water system. We have to act promptly to look after the people on the Watuco system, and by absorbing it into our system, it's actually a net gain for us. So, the rest of it's all just hyperbole, so let's just stick to the facts.
I am sticking to the facts. I was here. I know what was proposed through planning when I was voting on those issues. So I just feel that I would like to see it go to a referendum so that everybody gets a chance to watch what happens, scrutinize the vote. I'm uncomfortable with the petition process being sent out. I received a bunch of form letters from somebody. They were all identical, about 32 of them, that were petitioning for the third well issue. And like, it just seemed not reliable when it's all done by one person and sent in.
Mr. Chair, if I could just ask Jake Martins to clarify the petition process and the legitimacy of that process and how it is a credible means of engagement.
Thank you. Yes, so the petition process, I think we talked briefly about it at the last meeting, but just to further clarify that it is an individual petition form that would be developed by staff that would specifically list each property, the address, the property owners on title, and it would be direct mailed to those individuals for their consideration with information around what the decision is, and then giving them a rough timeline for their response. We've undertaken a similar petition process with many other services, and it has been successful, and I would suggest to you that the residents have been very appreciative of the opportunity to consider the information, not be given one day in which to vote or decide, given time to do that, and then having the opportunity to deliver that back to the CVRD for consideration. With respect to the administration of the process, it is all done within legislative services, and so the same staff that would be undertaking a referendum would also be in control of the petition process, and we'd be doing so in accordance with all the processes that we undertake any assent process with. Further, the petition process is recognized by the Local Government Act. It's provided for specifically in there, and as you can see in the recommendation, there is a provision that if sufficient and valid petition is received, that it is then therefore for the directors to decide whether to amend the bylaw to include those properties in the service area. Yeah, I'd be pleased to answer any of the questions respecting it.
I would think that I would need to see what happens if you do this petition process, that it is, valid before I would say I'm signing off on that bylaw, because I want to know that the people who live there have all had a chance to, have their say. And everyone's going to have to pay a lot of money to upgrade that system.
Either way they turn, they're going to have to pay a lot of money to upgrade that
It's a lot
system.
of money. I mean, they're talking like, I believe the report said upwards of $10,000 per property. And, I'm a little nervous about it. And also, I've had some experience with the petition process up north. And what happens when it's been difficult in the Craig Road water system, where only a dozen properties originally signed up, and I think it was 14 properties signed up to get water extended to them. And then, within a short period of time, a whole bunch of other houses got built after the petition was closed, and after, it gets added on to, but their taxes don't get immediately added on to. I'm still negotiating with and talking to the finance department at Strathcona, because they're still only taxing the original petitioners and not the added development that went in there to help pay for that system. So I'd like to know how it expands to future development, especially in an area where I know there's going to be more development.
So the petition only applies to the properties that are identified within the Watuco system itself now. If it's successful, the boundaries of BCOB would be extended to include just those properties that are subject to the petition. If there are properties outside, they would have to go through some form of process of petitioning or asking you to become members of the water system, and that would be an independent decision of this committee to consider those other properties at a later date.
But the map shows like this little nugget of green in the middle of the pink BCOB, and there's like large tracts of land in that, there's the lots, there's the 130 lots, and then there's a few big tracts of land, which I assume are the driving range and other pieces of private property that are slated to get subdivided and built on. So I don't know. No,
There's nothing in the works
there's a
right
couple
now.
big parcels in there.
Well,
which
you
I
have
only
to
count
realize,
as one
Director,
parcel.
that once the Watuco system is part of the Black Creek Oyster Bay, there is
Yeah.
no Watuco system anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the Black Creek Oyster Bay. And they'd have to come to this body if they wanted services from that service
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
So everything falls to us at the end anyway.
Yeah.
This
Well-
is just to address the needs of the 120 or what have you, people that are on the existing system, because there won't be an expansion on the existing system. That is the system that will be absorbed into the Black Creek Oyster Bay system and cease to exist.
So have we did do a couple public meetings, right, in the summertime, and then in last fall, we did a couple meetings in the Watuco area. I wasn't there for them, but are people pretty receptive to?
Chris, can you speak? to-
Yeah, absolutely. So we did have a meeting this summer with the residents, and so that prior to that, there'd been more informal contact, and based on that, and hearing from the Watuco managers as well, we were expecting a strong level of support and interest in the process, and that was demonstrated at the public event this summer. There is a strong interest in and desire for this decision to take place. I think there's a so I think it's fair to say there's a high level of discomfort with the current situation, the non-compliance with the provincial regulations, and some frustration with I guess the restrictions that the Watuco system currently has under the BCUC. So there's some concern for the future, and I think that is one of the strong appeals to the prospect of a regional conversion is to remove that uncertainty, have a clear path towards compliance with the drinking water regulations, and the numbers as communicated and as proven out by the analysis from both sides indicates that there is a nominal I guess reduction in cost in going this option rather than going it alone. So it's providing some higher level certainty. It's slightly cheaper, and I think people appear to be very receptive. So I think our sense is that a petition will very likely be successful.
You have to remember that they're between a rock and a hard place. This is their best way out. So there's resolve to move forward. I saw that at the meeting too. I mean, obviously nobody wants to pay an extra 10 grand, but what are their options, right? They need water, so it's gone on long enough.
I thought they were only dealing with telecommunications and energy issues. I didn't know they were still hearing
Yeah,
water
private water
problems.
utilities would report to the BCUC.
Just private,
come-
not public?
That's correct.
Correct. So Watuco is a privately owned utility, right? So they are under the auspices or under the regulatory authority of BCUC.
BCUC, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're the knight in shining armor. Slightly tarnished shining armor.
So how long before, and at one point, we asked that when Mr. Cowley wanted to pass that property over, or pass the Watuco system over to us 5 years ago or so, we said, okay, we'll look into it, but you need to bring your system up to scratch. Like, we don't want to inherit, especially from Area D's perspective, I don't want Area D to inherit a bunch of costs that to upgrade their system that would end up, I just don't want them to inherit a lot of costs. So we asked that the owners of Pacific Playgrounds upgrade the system to regional district standards prior to us considering doing this.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. So I think the circumstances have changed. I think the the principle being here that the Watuco users will cover all cost of conversion and pay the capital improvement cost charges is reassuring. But we took, through this process, we've taken a much deeper look at it than that to ensure that we wouldn't be inheriting infrastructure that is significantly worse than in condition or age than what we currently have. So I just confirmed this morning in advance of the meeting, so I could speak to this question, that the average age of their pipes in the ground is about 4 years older than our own. So they were built in the late 70s. Ours were built around 1980, 1982. So there isn't a significant difference there in terms of the age or type of the in-ground infrastructure. Then you look at the respective reserve balances. So when you factor in the significant injection of capital improvement cost charges to the service, in combination with the fact that their infrastructure is roughly the same age as ours, we don't see any differential in terms of future infrastructure liability. So short answer is expansion of the BCOB to take over Watuco would not be shouldering the broader service area with any additional infrastructure liability.
Okay. Well, I think we should try it out then. Let's receive the report and then we can vote on the recommendation.
Okay, on the report, all in favor? And recommendation? Seconded. Any further discussion?
Just a question.
Question?
So how soon after, if you do get a positive result on that petition, how soon afterwards will the transaction take place that we actually incorporate?
If Jake Martins can speak to the timing?
So I understand there's some communications efforts in the works to provide a newsletter, and it would also require us to develop the petition itself with the associated maps and accompanying information. We've typically provided 30 days in which, once we've sent the petition for people to respond, we then give ourselves a matter of a couple of weeks and just to ensure we tally the results and then provide a report back to the BCOB committee in which we confirm the outcome of that process. So I would suggest maybe in the order of a couple of months before we bring something back to this committee.
And then the actual conversion or transition date?
Yeah, so if successful and if the bylaw was then amended, then I believe we'd have to inform BC Assessment, in which that case the process would convert over in the new year.
Yeah, January 1st.
Yeah.
January 1st, 2021.
2021.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that we've done our due diligence on this, and I know we have reached out to the public on a number of occasions. Will be interesting to see how the information sessions go forward. Obviously, some of the people in the Watuco system, can't be too comfortable with the events as they're unfolding, but I think overall, majority of people realize that, as I say, they're between a rock and a hard place there, and the only way they're really going to see the light of day and make sure they're assured safe potable water is going to be going down this route. And at the end of the day, of course, as far as the value of your house goes and everything, it's not going to be a negative on it. It's probably going to be a positive to the value of their place. So obviously, if they can't use the water that's coming to their pipe to their house, there's no advantage to that whatsoever. So I will be voting in favor. So I'll call the question. All those in favor recommendation. And that carries. We'll make sure that we get a warm floor. Do we have heated concrete in the new building? That'd be nice. Be like a shower stall. Okay, no new business, no addendum, no media, no on camera, so termination, I guess.
So do we have any, before we just terminate, do we have any status on the third well? So there's people here from the third well.
Not at this time, and it remains in the minister's court in terms of scheduling a meeting with you in Victoria. That was a commitment that was made at our meeting at UBCM. Her staff have confirmed that they are aware of that and trying to arrange that, so we don't have any dates as of yet.
Okay.
And the House is sitting this week.
Because I'm ready to go anytime.
Okay.
I've already gone down to Victoria last month, so
Yeah.
on library stuff, so I'm willing to go down there.
Me too. So termination?
So moved.
Okay. All in favor? We are terminated. Thank you very much, staff. Thank you very much, Director.
Thank you.
And I'll be back here 2:30.